14 of us. And here we go. The recording has begun, which means the class is ready. It's great to see everybody. Yeah, you know what we're going to do? We're going to pray. Thank you, Father, for another day of life. Thank you for friends, young and old, as we've been talking about. Thank you for those committed to you and those questioning and thinking and skeptical. And thank you for this Bible, this ancient book that sometimes feels like it has no application to us at all. It's so old and out of date. And I pray that you help us to see it and to understand it for its time, and then understand it for us even now as a love letter for your people. Help us to think well. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. We're in the book of Lamentations. Good job. Everybody turn to Lamentations. How did that happen? I only missed 1 week. Yes, we're in the book of Revelation. But I want to take you back. I assume you have a Bible or a scrolling device of some kind that gets you to the text. I want you to at least look with me at the book of Ezekiel. I figure we haven't done that yet. We've mentioned it a lot, but I want you to see it because it would be really helpful for you to read about 8 chapters sometime over the next week. It really would have been helpful for you to read it sometime over the last 36 weeks that we've been doing this, but I can't go back in time, unfortunately. Only God is the Alpha and the Omega, as he says here in Revelation chapter 21. But I just want you to see it. We're not going to read through it because that would take us 20 minutes or more to read this. But look at chapter 39. 39 is where it mostly starts. It's where he starts making a prophecy against Gog. And it's just this, woe is you. He's going to make his name holy among the peoples. He's going to bury Gog. All these things are going to happen. And then he's going to talk about the temple. So the temple is chapter 40. And for the next 8 chapters after that, you're going to see all these descriptions of the temple. So look at like chapter 40, verse 1. It's the beginning of the year. It's the 10th of the month. There are visions. God has taken them to the land of Israel and set them on a high mountain. That's going to be pretty key. That's going to happen today in our text in Revelation. And on whose south side were some buildings that look like a city. That's going to happen. You're going to see a city. He took me there. I saw a man whose appearance was like bronze. We've already seen that over and over again. Standing in the gate with a linen cord and a measuring rod in his hand. He's got a staff, a rod, a reed he's going to measure with. And the man said to me, son of man, look with your eyes and hear with your ears. Pay attention to everything I'm going to show you, for that is why you've been brought here. Tell the house of Israel everything you see. You're going to see today that those words, maybe today, maybe next week, those words are going to be told to John. Tell the people what you're seeing here. That's important. East gate is what my next one says. So he sees this wall completely surrounding the temple area. And the length of the measuring rod in the man's hand is this long. He measured the wall. It's the gate facing east. The alcoves for the guards were 1 rod long. You see verse 8, he measured the portico. Verse 10, inside the east gate were 3 alcoves. They had the same measurements. And you look through that, just glance through, you just see measurements after measurements. The outer court, verse 17, he brought me into the outer court. I saw some rooms and pavement that have been constructed around the court, 30 rooms. He measured the distance, verse 19. They're as wide as they are long. The north gate, he measured the length of the width of the gate facing north, leading to the outside. Then verse 24, the south gate, he's measuring it, its jambs and its portico. Some of the and they had the same measurements as the others. The gates to the inner court are verse 28 and following. It was 50 cubits and 25 cubits long. And it's measuring the palm trees, decorated as jambs. 8 steps led up to it. All these measurements all the way through to verse 38, where they're preparing sacrifices. If you've just come on, I'm just looking at the book of Ezekiel right now as we get ready to talk about the book of Revelation. We've gone through 20 chapters of Revelation. We're in the final steps, and the angel is going to come and he's going to measure this new temple. So I'm wanting us that have been going through this for 36 weeks or whatever it's been to remember that Ezekiel is what this author is grabbing hold of. And he's remembering Ezekiel and he's bringing it in. So you're going to see verse 48, chapter 40, Ezekiel chapter 40, verse 48. He measures the jambs. This is the temple. The width of the entrance is 14 cubits, 3 cubits wide on either side. Portico is 20 cubits wide, 12 cubits front to back. Then this man's going to bring him up in chapter 41. He's going to give a whole bunch of measurements. Look at verse 3, more measurements. Look at verse 5. Then he measured the wall. Look at verse, verse 8. It was the length of the rod, 6 long cubits. Verse 12, which way it's facing, it's 5 cubits. Verse 13, he measured the temple to 100 cubits, measured the length. Are you getting the idea here? What's happening? Right? There's a lot of measuring going on. In chapter 43, the glory that has left the temple is going to come back in. That is, that glory that left and went into exile with the people of God is now returning. Or at least that's kind of the picture. Now remember, this is the eschatological temple. There is no temple, right? I mean, that's the terrible thing. There's no temple at this point. We're waiting. This is the eschatological, this is the hopeful temple. John is going to be talking about this eschatological temple. So he's grabbing hold of Ezekiel's stuff and bringing it into his time. Okay, but he's going to change it. He's going to use it, but he's going to change it, which shouldn't be surprising because he's been doing that for the last 20 chapters, and you've seen it if you've been traveling with us, right? Grabs ideas and then shifts them to his own world so they will understand it differently, but similarly. Okay, so the glory is going to return. Luke is going to say that the glory is returned as well, right? That's basically the whole chapter. Luke chapter 2 that's why it's so long, that chapter. It's all about that one theme, the glory returning. The angels will stand out there and they will say, there's this child that has been born. Simeon will hold up the child and say, this is a light to the nations, right? He's going to sit in the temple with the wise rabbis, and he's going to argue against or with them. They're going to have conversations together. All these things are going to take place in the temple. It's Luke's way of saying it's back, baby. All right, but John's saying, yes, it's back in Jesus, but there's something else because Jesus is going to come back again. He's taking all this stuff together. The altar is going to be measured. He's going to talk about the prince, the Levites, and the priests. I'm just reading the italics parts in my Bible. This is chapter 44. And then the land's going to start to be divided in chapter 45, 25,000 cubits, 20,000. So it moves from the temple itself to the land. It's larger. It's going to talk about the holy days. And you can keep reading for yourself. It's going to go all the way through to chapter 48. And even if you look in chapter 48, as they start to divide the land, verses 9 and onward, there's going to be a special offering that's 25,000 cubits and 10,000 cubits. Sacred portion for the priest, 25,000 cubits, north side. It's going to keep. If you can't see the numbers in Ezekiel, you're just missing. It's like filled with numbers, constantly measuring things. Okay. You got the big picture idea, and if you just come in and never study this with us before, you're bored out of your mind right now. That's okay. Okay, just live with it. Now let's get into Revelation chapter 20, because Revelation 20 or 21 is not at all boring. So here's where we started this chapter last week. Those of you can actually see it. Let's see if I can. Let's do it like this. Okay. If you can read these things, these are the things that are in this new city. These are the things that are not there. I wrote these on the board last week. What is there? Wait, sorry. That's completely wrong. Don't read that. These are the things that are not there. These are the things that are there, okay? So not there is the sea, tears and pain, character that's inconsistent with God's kingdom kind of life. The temple's not there, the sun and the moon aren't there, the gates aren't closed, there's no more curse. But what is there? God, glory, all these things like gates, walls, stones, etc., anything like that. Peoples, plural, creativity, life, his face. These are the things that are there. So what John is going to do is he's going to set up this this whole scenario that is to help you to see an ideal city. So as we look through this and we think through what does this city look like, remember what you should not be doing. You should not be getting pedantic with all the little things that are going on in there. Okay, like how can a city be like this? How can it be hundreds of miles tall? That doesn't even make sense. It's fine. It's not an actual city, right? Gates, they can't get pearls. Gates can't be made out of pearls because if you're going to walk into a gate that's made out of a pearl, that means the oyster would have to be like 25 feet tall. Like those don't exist, right? So stop. Don't think like that. This is an ideal city. You're going to find out in chapter 21 that there are people, the bad guys are outside the city. You're like, I am absolutely sure that the bad guys have all been killed already. Okay? Don't worry about that. And oh my goodness, the gates of the temple are open, right? That doesn't make any sense either. Hey, how can they be open? Because then the bad guys are out there. They're going to come in. Okay, this is an idealized city. How it's going to look. This is a perfect, beautiful. You're like, why are there even walls at all? Because that's what cities look like. Cities have walls. You're like, but they don't need any walls. The whole point of having a wall is protection. And it doesn't matter. That's not the point. This is what an ideal city looks like. All right. So we can jump in chapter 21. I just want to read the first few verses. We've already done a few verses in here. Remember? Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. We talked a lot about all this that comes with sea. What does sea stand for? Remind me real quick.
Chaos.
Chaos, right? So what are all the things that exist in our chaotic world today? You know, no fires in Canada or California, no typhoons or floods or any implications that come from chaos. No trafficking of children. Those of you who've seen the new movie came out this week that is all the rage apparently, right? None of that stuff can happen anymore. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. Okay? So new in contradistinction to the old Jerusalem. This is something different, but it's still the holy city. It's the place where God dwells. It's Eden. Right? We're going to see Eden very clearly in the middle of chapter 22, but right now we've got this Eden and the people of God are there, and the people of God are somehow forming a temple. There's no actual temple, but the people of God are the temple. We're going to find out. Okay. Verse 3, and I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, behold, the dwelling of God is with men. He'll dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself will be with them. So God has come. That's always been the purpose. From Genesis chapter 1, I don't know if I've said this enough, but I feel like I need to keep saying it over and over again. The purpose was always for God to dwell with man. That messed up in Genesis 3, and God exiled mankind. Okay, we don't have to wonder whether Adam is a real person or not. The point is that Israel has been moved away because of their unwillingness to follow God alone. They've been moved away from his presence. And the whole point is, how is God going to get back into their presence? So now, finally, after all of this time, he's going to bring his city down to earth. Okay, metaphorically, these two worlds are going to collide, finally. They've always collided a little bit, right? They've collided in Eden. They've collided in the tabernacle. They've collided in the temple. They've collided anywhere Jesus walked, anywhere where you as the Holy Spirit walked. All that stuff brings heaven to earth. But this is this final move where it completely comes together, where man's world and God's world are completely one. It's going to wipe away every tear from their eye. Death shall be no more, no mourning, no crying, no pain anymore, for the former things have passed away. So we said that means no more headaches, No more illnesses, no more cutting onions, I think I said last time, right? Because it's no more tears. So all right. And verse 5. He who sat on the throne said that he is making, behold, I'm making all things new. And he said, write this, for these words are trustworthy and true. Remember, we saw that in Ezekiel. Write these things, these true, trustworthy things, get these out to the people. So God is breaking his silence finally in verse 5 to say truth is important. There are new things here that are coming out. He's making, or not new things. He's making all things new. The words are true. And this is, I think, where we stopped, where we started asking questions like, how does he make all things new? Right. We started, I read to you Hoykema, who says, will there be better Beethovens on the new earth? Shall we see then better Rembrandts, better Raphael? Shall we read better poetry, better drama, better prose? And then I asked, what does this mean to you? What does it mean to think new? And I think we talked about that, whether it's space travel or wherever we're at. And then verse 6, and I think this is where we stopped, right? Does you remember? Okay. Verse 6 says, and he said to me, it is done, and the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give from the fountain of the water of life without payment. Anything grab you there?
He's quoting from Isaiah.
Yeah. Which is pretty normal for him, right? Nothing new for him to quote from Isaiah. Isaiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, these have been pretty consistent quotations. The fountain of the water of life without payment. Alpha and Omega, right? Beginning and end. There's no, he's not bound by this time thing. He's all of this somehow. And you don't need to think too philosophically about this. Like, does God exist outside of time? Does he not? We don't know. This isn't supposed to be a theological dogmatic point that you can write into your systematic theology that God exists outside of time because of this book, this verse, right? The idea is simply that he is all in all, Alpha and the Omega. He's the beginning, he's the end. It's a concept. Okay. But I do think it is saying something here, right? Because we've been looking all throughout Revelation. The question is, who's going to win? And to call him the Alpha and the Omega does seem to imply that we have a very sovereign God, that he knows all of this stuff. There's nothing that's going to take him by surprise. He's going to work it all out. So we can trust him. All right, 7 and 8. We might spend some time in verse 8, I'm guessing. So I'm going to read 7 and 8. You guys look for stuff that we want to talk about. He who conquers shall have this heritage, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. Okay. But as for the cowardly, the faithless, the polluted, as for murderers, fornicators, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars, their lot shall be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. Okay. So what do they have to do in order to get this inheritance? Verse 7.
Overcome.
I didn't hear that, but I think I heard something. Conquer?
Overcome.
Conquer, be faithful.
Right. Good. And Lori says, be victorious, be faithful, conquer. Yep. And that's what you're going to get. You're going to get, he will be your God and you will be his son or daughter. Daughter.
Mine says children.
There you go. Yep. Children. So here are the character traits that are inconsistent with God. This will not be in the kingdom. Right? So let's look at these.
What's that?
Because I don't know how you feel about this, but cowardly, faithless, idolater, I mean, at least those, I'm pretty good at those. So I guess that means I'm going to the lake of fire. I'm sure none of the rest of you have struggled with cowardice before, or faithfulness. Any thoughts on these? Does this concern you about anybody you know?
I mean, all of us that teach our kids about Santa Claus are a bunch of liars. They're gonna go to hell.
Ah, there you go. Yeah. Guess that's it. All of you are liars if you played the Santa Claus game. Nobody's interested in this. All right. Well, let me draw some
Well,
stuff.
we're all hoping that it doesn't really mean what it says.
Yeah. Guess we are hoping that, aren't we?
This is the verse where biblical literalism falls apart.
Because we're all these things, right?
It's a literal 7 days, but this is not literal. You know?
Laurie says belief in Jesus and repentance brings us his forgiveness.
Yeah, but Jace, also, if you look at, everything that's listed in there in verse 8 is what we are as humans. They're what we are by our own nature, what we are without any intervention from God. But then you turn right around and you roll back up into the second half of verse 6. And, we kind of glanced over it a little bit, but it said, to the thirsty, I will give from the spring of the water of life without payment. And then one of the things we failed to do is really, kind of mark in who's the thirsty.
Good.
I mean, ideally, who's the thirsty? The thirsty is all of the people that are listed in verse 8. So they're how, at least how I see it is that, hey, you know what? I've had times in my life where I've been cowardly, I've been faithless, I've been this, I've been that, but yet I thirst for not being that. I thirst for the knowledge of God, for the love of God, etc. And therefore it says in the end of 6, to the thirsty, I will give from the spring of the water of life without payment, meaning there's nothing that I can do. There's nothing that I can give. There's nothing that I can contribute or help out or anything else that's going to do it. So if I'm reading this correctly, what it kind of looks like is that, hey, he who wants it gets it. He who doesn't want it doesn't get it.
Yeah, I think that's good. That's definitely, I would say, bringing in some Paul into John's understanding, which I think is fair, perfectly good. And I do think I think you're right. By the way, Jeremy, nice to hear your voice. I haven't heard from you in years.
Right, dude? Good to see you, man.
I think we did skip too quickly over the to the thirsty, I will give from the fountain of the water of life. We just said, well, Isaiah quotes, right? There you go. But that's a pretty powerful sentence. Right? Those of us who are thirsty, which is pretty powerful.
This isn't to argue that, but kind of to piggyback on it, that if verse 8 encompasses all the ones that are thirsty, but if you get it, if you want it, you get it. If you don't want it, you don't get it. So like, I don't know, it feels kind of like the whole universal justification or whatever, that, well, in the end, everybody's cowardly, unbelieving, vile, murderer, sexually immoral, but we're all covered by the blood. Yay, there is no second death for anybody, kind of thing. So yeah, where's the distinction between who is going to have that second death? Because if those who practice all those things are the ones that are thirsty, and the ones that are thirsty get, is that making sense? I feel like it's just all kind of like going, that logic in my head right now anyway is just kind of going in circles.
I think you're absolutely right, Amy. I think this verse, along with this chapter, all the way up through the middle of chapter 22, is probably one of the clearest arguments for this universalism. that if you're thirsty, you get in. Like, it's really that simple. And he's going to make all of these new, right? Ephesians even says, such were some of you, but you've been cleansed by the blood. I just saw somebody write that down, right? Cleansed by the blood. So,
Question,
yeah, Mary.
and I wonder if the Greek, is it just like this, or is it whoever's thirsty and keeps on thirsting after, is it that kind of a tense where it's hungry and keep on being hungry after God, or, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, there is a tense. So there's a difference between your imperfect tense, which is just a consistent thing, or an aorist tense. So you're right. And I just looked down to grab my Greek to find that out. And I don't know. I didn't bring it with me. It's the one time I didn't bring my Greek text with me, of course.
I was just thinking, the knock and knocking and seeking and keep on seeking and finding and
Right.
keep on finding. I was just
Yeah.
wondering if this was,
Continuous action. Yeah. I don't,
Hey, two
I'm not sure
points.
that's a verb, actually. So that probably wouldn't even apply.
okay.
I mean,
Sorry, somebody else
didn't-
said something? Steve?
Yeah, Jesus, he gave the lady water from the fountain of life in a parable, right? Or as a parable. And also God forgives our sins anytime we ask him to. Right? Isn't that
Yep.
what this is? I mean, we've read that and studied that, and it's thick through the Bible. Isn't this really saying that in a different way?
So first, I would say it wasn't a parable. It was
Okay.
Jesus at the woman at the well.
Right.
And he offers her that. He said, if you knew who I was, you'd be asking for that fountain of life, that true thing. But still, your point is made. I'm not sure here that John, and you guys, we can have this discussion. Just because I've said it doesn't mean it's the end of an argument. I'm not sure John here is trying to figure out the intricacies of who is saved and who is not saved, and what comes with forgiveness, who's in, who's out. I mean, he is talking about who's in, who's out, but I think that maybe we're mixing our atonement theology, the way we think about things, mostly from Paul, and putting it in on John. I think he might be doing something a little different.
Okay, so that's not fair then to do that. Got it.
Maybe, but I'm probably speaking not just to you, Steve, but to everyone who's kind of spoken, maybe even to myself as I'm thinking this through. Let's just remember what the book of Revelation has been about, right? It's been a call to the people in the church to eschew all of this worldliness, to not
Right.
fall prey to the empire, right? Because they're constantly tempted to do that. So this is the way you do hortatory. This is a response to that, right? Don't be like these other people in these ways. In fact, I think it's really interesting that he starts with cowards and he ends with liars. I don't know if John's sitting down and thinking through the order of all of this just perfectly, but it seems strange to me, because the whole book is about standing against opposition, holding strong, overcoming when everything is against you, not being afraid. It's about not lying, but being truthful. That's been the whole thing, right? Be truthful. Confess Jesus as Lord. When people come against you and they say, just all you have to do is recant this. No, you need to say the truth. You need to say the truth. No, it's okay. Just give into this. No. Be strong, be brave. Don't be cowardly. Don't be a liar. In these situations, I think, right? You shouldn't say things like Caesar is Lord, even though that's the easiest thing to do by word or by deed, because everything's around them, right, is telling them, join the empire. It's so much easier to survive if you just do that. So he's saying, don't be cowardly, don't be a liar. He's saying, don't be faithless or unbelieving, right? So faithless, be faithful during this trial, this tribulation that you're going through. Be faithful. Stay strong. Don't give in to this overwhelming pressure. Overcome so you can get the heritage. You can drink from this. You're thirsty. You can drink from this well of water of life, this fountain of the water of life. Vile or polluted. Don't be vile or polluted, right? This usually the sexually immoral, it's but it often has to do with like temple impurity, right? So the sexual immorality is not just, I don't know, sleeping with your girlfriend, right? It's rituals that you do in the entrance of the temple, that you do in order to get the gods excited. Right? So that's that vile thing there. Murderers. I wonder here if this isn't, not necessarily murdering somebody, stabbing somebody, but maybe turning someone over to the government at that time. They're supposed to stay strong. Don't betray somebody else. Don't save yourself in order, get rid of somebody else, throw them your buddy, right? So you save yourself. I don't know, is this making, but if I keep going, we got sexually immoral again. So there was vile, but this is sexually immoral again. I think it's paganism of the cult at that time, the worship cult. Those who practice magic arts and sorcerers, which can be translated seductive signs, or anything that seduces by power. So demons, maybe beasts, anything that has this seductive pull, which we've seen, right? The beast out of the sea, the beast out of the land, which is just political power and religious power designed to pull you away from the Lamb, which happens to us every single day, doesn't it? Every day we're seduced by religion or by politics. You're like, I don't remember being seduced. Oh, you are. Like these other things that we worship. In fact, that's the next one, idolaters. Those who've succumbed, especially to the demand of the imperial cult, right? The empire, Caesar is Lord. Don't say those things. Don't do those things. Don't follow that.
Is this the part where we talk about how we skipped Tuesday school to talk about heaven coming to earth to celebrate the 4th of July?
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Yeah, Travis and I were going back and forth on that last week on Tuesday. Isn't that interesting? I knew that nobody would show up as we pledged our allegiance to the country. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I don't think Travis or I don't know about Travis, but I think in our little conversations, neither of us are against patriotism. Neither of us against fireworks and loving your country. But it is interesting that we can't do a Bible study on the night that we celebrate them. Right? We can't make that kind of thing work. And probably all of you are like, I was ready. I was here. Where were you, Jace? Yeah, okay, I'm the one that can't speak. Fair enough. Yeah.
I think James chapter 4 speaks on Revelation, the section that we're talking about right now a little bit, where he talks about the strife and the jealousy. And then he goes on after talking about illicit affairs and so forth. Present yourself to God, be humble, be close to God, he'll come close to you. So it's that push and pull thing, that yin and yang thing.
That's interesting. Yeah. Adulterous people, an enemy, becoming an enemy of God. And he starts off, is that earlier in chapter 4 or is that earlier? About murders.
Oh yeah, he talks about murder in here. I just saw it a moment ago, and that was interesting too. Why he used the word murder, if I can find it.
Yeah, I know it's here in James somewhere, but it doesn't say that right there. But I've preached through James. I remember talking about murder. Maybe it's right in the beginning. No, I don't see it right now. But I know it's here. But that's very interesting. The connections that James and John are making.
It just seems like in a lot of the stuff, like as much as I want it to be, find the loophole for myself, Like,
Yeah.
it's not written that way. Like it's kind of an Occam's razor thing, right? Like if he wanted that to be the message that like you should put aside these things and then you'll get in, then you will be included. Then why did he say there are going to be people who? I mean, he's very clearly saying that there are going. I mean, it seems to me the message here is you people who are this, you're not included, right? I mean, there is a very clear division. It's not. He's not calling for people to change here. He's saying the people who are this are in, and the people who are this are not. And you can like come up with these ways to make it work so that you can, they're like, maybe you say that like, well, there just won't be those kinds of people there because everyone will have renewed their heart. And that's like, I don't know. It just feels like the Occam's razor of this is, unless it's a translation thing, like if he wanted that to be the message that everyone like turn away from these things so that you will inherit this, he could have written it that way, but he chose not to. So I don't know what that means.
Huh. See, I guess I'm thinking, all right, so this book is written to the church, right? It's written to the churches.
Yeah.
Who are in need of encouragement and urging. So the context of this as an occasional letter to the churches during this struggle, like there aren't bad guys reading this, bad guys who need to know this. It is slightly encouraging to the people, right? That's all along. So David, I hear what you're saying, and that all along that, they're going to get theirs.
Yeah.
Right. That's what we've been waiting for, that kind of vindication of all of this. So I just felt like each one of these things that are listed are all things that the Christians are dealing with.
Yeah.
And that's what
So
made me go that other direction. But you might be right though.
Well, no, I definitely see where you're coming from, because I think there is, I think you're right that this letter, like you've been able to really show us that this is supposed to be like a rallying cry. Don't give up. Like God's got you in this. But it's interesting. So it's interesting that we as Christians worry that we're these other things, but those Christians wouldn't have identified themselves as that. And maybe they're just like, maybe they were more devout. I don't know. I mean, they were living in maybe our world is just harder to, I don't know.
What do you mean they wouldn't have identified themselves as this? I don't understand that.
Well,
Say that again.
Oh yeah. So I feel like, I was thinking what you were saying here is that this was trying to encourage the church that like the ones who are oppressing you, who are these other people, the cowardly, unbelieving, vile, etc. Those who are oppressing the Christians, right? They will be dealt with. Right. So those are the bad guys, right? That you said, quote unquote, bad guys.
Yeah.
Right. So the Christians don't identify themselves, I would think, as the bad guys then, because like you're saying, like the bad guys aren't reading it, which would be the church. Right.
Right.
So wouldn't that mean that the church then sees themselves as the counter to that? Like the first group, the thirsty, those who are wanting the water. Right?
I would say they see themselves as the people who are wanting the water, yes, but who are tempted to compromise.
Okay.
That are every day being tempted to fall prey to the empire. So this is a call to them to stand strong. Don't let this happen.
Okay. So that second group you're saying is those people they see who are oppressing them and what they could become if they're not careful.
Yes.
Is that kind of what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah.
Is that how we should, I guess that's what you're saying, is maybe we should be reading it that way too.
Yes.
Right. That this world is against us. And if you're not careful, you could end up being what we're striving so hard against, right? That you could be pulled into that. Okay.
Yeah, that we're going to be sexually immoral, magic arts, idolaters, liars, cowardly. Yeah,
because that pressure is always in on us. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. I see
it's
that.
the tree in the middle of the garden, right?
Mm-hmm.
it's this constant thing. Don't touch it. Just don't touch it. Don't. And it's like, but it's right there and it's so good.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the empire, let's be honest, it's wonderful, isn't it? I mean, as you look
Yeah.
around, it really I mean, I
For
feel like almost every day
lot
I'm
of
thinking,
people.
I don't know if God's got this right or not. Like, this just seems better. If I just embrace this, I can make twice as much money.
I mean,
And I'm going to be happier if I've got twice as much money. Just like, that's an everyday battle for me.
Yeah.
In
As
the
long as you got the right
garden-
color skin and,
you know,
the right.
in the garden, I only get what I can make in my garden. In the empire, I get shit from all over the world from the people I oppress and take advantage of. And
That's right.
air conditioning.
Good connection to James, because that's what Dad was saying about this whole thing, right? That's what James is about. He's writing to the church and saying, you guys are oppressing people. That's the whole problem, right? Is that they've forgotten what true religion is, taking care of the orphans and the widows. They're getting fat on the workers, on the basically slave labor that they have, and they're not taking care of them. Because
Yeah,
it's
what
so
was that
much
thing?
easier
What-
if you just take control.
Forget slave labor, let's call it minimum wage. I mean, it's great, you know? So,
Yep.
What was the James verse? Now I need to go back and.
He
look
was
at that
talking
again.
about James chapter 4, but it's really the whole book.
It
But
is
James
the whole
4
book.
is the clear spot.
The chapter, I mean, verse 2 is the one that says, by one version, you are jealous and covetous. What others have, you covet what others have, your desires go unfulfilled, so you become murderers.
Mm.
To hate is to murder.
Yeah, my version says you kill and covet. I didn't see that before, but now that you've drawn attention to it. And it is the word kill there, at least according to my commentary here in it. It's figurative.
As opposed to
maybe.
murder.
No, same word. There's no
Okay.
difference between kill and murder, by the way, in the Bible. It's the same word. It's just a concept. The idea might be different as to why you do it, but the word is the same.
And we can,
Even nakat and smite.
there's no mens rea in the Bible.
There's no mens rea in the Bible. That's right. Yep.
We murder today in so many ways. We do. And we
Yeah.
don't even realize it at times. Sometimes we are deliberate in doing it. And sometimes we don't even realize that we do it because we're part of this culture, that we live in, this world. And we murder.
Which goes
It's
along
the
perfectly with Jason's saying, because we're not vigilant about it, right? Like we let it slide in and we don't even realize it
Yeah.
until it's too late. And John might be trying to say, like, you guys got to be careful, because you're going to become what you not hate, but what's oppressing you.
murder is basically just not caring.
Yeah. I think you're probably right. That's exactly what it is. And Fran and David, I think that's it. Right? It's the system. It's all around us. We can't even escape it. It's
It's the air we
I mean,
breathe. It's the
air that we breathe.
Yeah.
We're so in the
Yeah.
middle of the empire. In order to stand against it, the Christian life would look so different. I was reading Eugene Peterson just today or yesterday, and that was his whole thing was just like we just inhabit this world. And
Yeah.
the picture of a Christian, it's like we've all checked the box. Everybody can be a Christian in today's Christianity. Pretty much anybody's good. You've agreed to a few things, check, and you're good. You're a Christian and you're a pretty nice person. I mean, most people you meet, 90% of people are pretty nice. They're not trying to hurt people. They're trying to just live life. So they check the Christian box. But that's not what the Bible's calling us to. Be pretty nice
Right.
and check a couple of dogmatic boxes.
No, I don't mean
A
to be,
completely alternative way of living. Go ahead, Randall.
I don't mean to be crazy here, but I especially.
No, we know you are, but that's okay.
It's true.
I love you, man. I'm just teasing you.
No, I'm wrestling with this a little ideologically. It's going to sound like maybe I'm taking a jab. I'm really not. I'm actually just trying to sort through this. But if indeed all are saved at the end and there is no judgment, then why not just kind of be okay with that cultural Christianity definition that you came up with just now? why not be okay with me going into a house, seeing someone on their deathbed, claiming as much truth as they can conjure at the moment about Jesus, and say, yeah, Jesus does love you and he is going to rescue you. So I guess there's a breakdown in what at least to me, maybe somebody else has got some other way of reconciling this, but there's a breakdown to me in struggling with really being worried about whether people are going to overcome in the power systems of this world versus a universalist assumption that, hey, maybe that is all it is. Maybe that is all it is just to check a few boxes and say that you believe in Jesus and that you knew that he forgave. Because I meet so many people. That lay out the gospel for me, whether it's on their deathbed or their loved ones beside them, you know. Their lives don't necessarily show it, but at the end of the day, that's really all we're all going to get saved anyways.
But what if that's what it's not about, right? I mean, like, I think that God wants us to live these full lives that he's put in front of us, right? That he wants us to be able to experience life to its fullest. And if you're just trying to get away with the minimum, like, that's not living life to its fullest. It's not loving people. It's not experiencing what God's creation in its best form could be, right? Like, I mean, if you go your whole life and cheat and hurt people the entire time, like, you've missed a gift that God has given you, that he's put it in front of you. And like, whether you go to heaven or not, I mean, like, this experience on earth that is a creation of God's, that is supposed to be that has the potential to be so wonderful and beautiful, you missed out, man, right? Like, I mean, like, it's a bummer, like, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, David. But coming from the other perspective here, and I know this is the farce of Western individualism, how does this apply to me? But at least in my context, I think through that then, and I'm like, someone's on the deathbed, then why don't I just go ahead and give them the reassurance that Jesus loves them and that he's died for their cross, or died on the cross for them? I mean, at that point, they have no chance of living that full life that you're talking about.
But you've given them that little bit of peace, right? You've given that little,
right.
I mean, even a modicum of love.
Right. So just play on is what just play on. Yes.
Yeah.
You live a piss awful life, but because you're claiming Jesus, you're going to be saved.
I mean, but the alternative is just saying that, like, I mean, then you're saying, well, you don't, I mean, are you, this is like a straw man thing, right? I'm not saying this about you, but like, the alternative is like, well, we're going to withhold that from him, right? We're going to withhold that.
I'm not going to.
No, I know, but like, I mean, but in your head, I mean, that, I feel like that's the art, like, that's kind of what you're going back and forth, right? It's like we could, I mean, it doesn't matter what we say anyway, right? But I mean, like, we could extend this grace to him on his deathbed, this person who's been terrible their whole life, and give them that modicum of love and peace, that one little, I mean, a moment of experience of God's love that they didn't have their entire life. Or you could say, no, buddy, you screw up and you don't get a cookie, right? Like, I mean, you don't get this little bit of love. And like, I mean, that's hurting us. That hurts us as much as it hurts that person, right? I mean, that's breaking God's heart, that we can't forgive that person or give that person grace, because, so I think it's a missed opportunity, not only for that person, but if we can't forgive them and extend God's grace, even in that last moment, then we have lost out on something too,
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know.
I just am coming back to the universalist argument that we're all going to make it anyways in the end. We're all going to be purified in some sense. I mean, if we take some form of universalism that says we're all going to be purified, we're all going to be purified in some sense. So who gives a
But
fuck?
yeah,
if-
well, because
I
because
didn't
that's
say-
saying that the
I didn't
that's
say
saying that the
okay, but
journey.
Who gives
Right.
about whether I'm cowardly or faithless in some degree, shape, or form?
Right, but
because-
that's throwing away the entire life, right? Like you can say in the end
I
it'll be
un-
this way, right?
I-
But there's
yeah, I
still
get
that
that.
in between, right? That like, I mean, it's
I get
like, you
that.
know, yeah. I guess that's
I
where I'm
get
coming
what
from.
you're
Is like,
saying.
yeah.
What I'm saying is, though, in the universalist argument, you can be a degree of bad and finally get purified based on how much purification needs to take place. So maybe
Jesus
I am
told
a-
us a story about that, you know?
So maybe I am a shred cowardly. Maybe I am a shred faithful. I didn't want to be. Now I can give you example after example of areas in my life where I've been a coward and I wish I hadn't been.
Right. And you wish you hadn't been, right? So that's like John said, like
Right,
John is
but at
putting
the
this out
end
there
of
for
the
us.
day,
Is
just
like,
give me the grace. Forget about the fact that I might get into the second death.
Right.
Just give me the grace.
you
to
just said
say,
you-
"Hey,
but
it's
you just
okay,
said you-
you're gonna get in.
but you just said you wish that you hadn't, right? So like you would have had a more joyful life if you hadn't
Yes.
done that thing, right? That is God. That's
Absolutely.
what God wants for you, right? God wants your
Absolutely.
maximum amount of like, because it's not. I don't think I mean, I've come around to this. Is like I don't think it's all just like we're sludging through this life and then it's all about what happens after the life is over. So let's just if we all end up at the finish line together, it doesn't like. I think there's more to this entire experience, this like mortal coil experience that we don't fully appreciate when we only focus on heaven, like the only focus on on death, on the destination of like where we get to at the end. I think there's like this in between that we're in now is something beautiful that we probably can't even see from our perspective, right? In ways that we can't even know right now.
I think I would agree with you full-heartedly, David.
I-
So I don't think that there's any disagreement whatsoever between what we're
Right.
saying.
I
Just-
agree with you. Yeah.
What I hear you saying, Randall, tell me if I'm wrong, is that without the threat of death and eternal death and a second death, people are not likely to actually do anything good. There's no incentive. Like we need to have the threat of hell in order to actually live a good life. Like
I
and
would say that that's the-
universalism eliminates that. So therefore, is that what you're saying?
I would say that that's the contrapositive of what I was initially trying to state, which is just simply the fact I don't think I'm necessarily saying that there needs to be fear, although that might be assumed. My essential thought is, why are we so worried whether I'm cowardly if that's the case? Like, and I get back to what David said. Yes, it's absolutely right. I don't live my foolish, but there is no way at the end of this Bible study tonight, very existentially, there is no way I'm going to walk away feeling good about the fact that I was cowardly 8 times in my life. At this point in the conversation, I'm going to sit here and go, wow, I am a messed up brother. So why hammer away at myself in self-deprecation about how cowardly, faithless? My wife can tell you how faithless I've been, how I've been a murderer and a slanderer of everybody's reputation. You know, why hammer away at that if we all are feeling broken and contrite of spirit for that, if we're all going to get saved at the end anyway?
So I guess my response to that would be, from my perspective, would be like, you don't have to. Like, I mean, God's not making you, right? So like,
Right.
but if you were to look through this and strive for that, you would like, you might have a more joyous, loving, happier life,
sure.
closer to God, closer to that walk of God. But you don't have to. Like, I mean, like,
I
no one's
agree
making
with
you, right?
David.
Like,
I agree
yeah,
with
I-
you.
yeah.
I feel like we're saying the same thing.
Randall, you are saved already, man. I mean, we don't,
That's what
you're
we're
gonna be
questioning in
saved
this
then.
moment.
You are saved already. Did we forget that?
Well, no, I
Yeah.
do believe I'm saved, but this is where I struggle with this passage. It's just what Jace is saying, I think, is correct. If you read this straightforward, we all fall into this. So how in the world are we really supposed to ever have any assurance? And I do think there's an answer. I don't know what it is.
Jesus told us the story of the prodigal son, remember? You remember the prodigal son?
Sure.
And the father welcomed him with open arms.
I do think there's a way forward, but I'm not sure I'm content yet with any of the answers, and I don't know where that leaves me. I'm not always content with drawing Pauline theology into John. And so I'm still trying to figure out what could John be meaning in and of himself in making this statement. But I agree with you, Fran. You're right. You're right.
I don't think John is trying to build an atonement or a soteriological theology. So, and I think everyone has said that. I don't think either Randall or David or Fran, nobody's saying otherwise. The questions that you guys are asking are not questions that John is trying to wrestle with, but they're implications that come from it, obviously, what you're saying. What I don't see is that this passage is actually leading us to any kind of universalism. So I don't actually see that, even though some people might. In fact, I think this section here is trying to say quite the opposite, right? If you guys don't overcome, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. So I don't think it's giving us I don't think we should read this as a systematic theology statement, but rather as a hortatory statement. There's a big difference, right? So when I preach something, for sure, so if I were to preach the way that you're talking about, or the way it's been suggested, I would be preaching only goodness and love and mercy and grace, and never talk about sin or never talk about anything else, right? We've got some of those speakers out there right now on TV pretty regularly, making millions and millions of dollars saying that. I think John is very different, and I think all the authors of the Bible are very different. They are saying there's grace and there's kindness and there's goodness. They're also saying you have to overcome. And I think that's what John is saying right now. If you want to have this kind of life in the end, you have to overcome. This is not you can try and transfer this to an end, as you're standing next to somebody who's dying. But John would say, well, I didn't write that for that. This is not that situation. It's a great implication, things you've got to come with. But I'm talking about people who are trying to take care of their families right now and trying to keep their job and are bending to the empire. Stop bending to the empire. Right?
Yeah, I think one thing that
you're
we might.
doomed. Sorry.
Yeah,
David.
I mean, I think. Oh, no, I was just thinking as you were saying that, but like one reason maybe it's hard for us sometimes is because this is Revelation. It's the last chapter of the Bible. It's the last book of the Bible. It's like this is the end, and so we associate like end times and the end of our lives, and now this imagery of like the lake of fire is like our Western imagery of hell, which is an afterlife thing, and like that's, and he's using this imagery, but I don't think. I wonder. I mean, I don't actually know this, but I wonder if their culture didn't have this obsession with the afterlife that we do, and so when they read this like imagery, and they don't have the baggage of like, I don't know, Dante and all that kind of stuff, of like, the lake of fire is like, I mean, we have this image of hell, and it aligns with our image of hell, which aligns with our end of life stuff, and that makes it hard for us to read this as something that's not like what's going to happen to you when you die, right? So I get what you're saying, and I also see like why my entire life I've always read this as like, this is what happens when you die, and like, and if John's not doing that, when you study this more carefully, it takes a little bit. It takes work to shake off that cruft from it. Yeah.
And
so when
remember, just because John is saying something, because he's setting something up, doesn't mean he's trying to give you a picture of what is happening or what is going to happen as a reality and something like that. He is trying to wake you up to what is happening around you and saying, don't fall prey to this.
It's kind of like what you've taught us about
to
prophets.
imagine this beautiful city, right? And all of its things. I don't think you should imagine the city is going to look anything like that. This is just, how do I wake you up? It's a lake of fire. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't stop living this way, Christians. This isn't the way you're supposed to live. You want to inherit this kingdom that God has given us, this beautiful place. Stop doing that. Like,
I think
So-
it goes back to what you said, what you tried to teach about prophets, right? Like prophets don't predict the future. They call to action, and that if and like I
And John
tend
is
to
a
keep
prophet.
forgetting that. And John is a prophet, so he's not saying this is what I see the future. This is what's going to happen to you. This is like the call to action. This is what can be if you don't listen to what God is saying to this message I'm giving you, right? So
Nice summary. I love that. Yeah, remind us that John's a prophet. That was beautiful. Thank you.
So, Jace, instead of thinking of it, because where I was going with it was, I think either we need to take the universalist route, either otherwise I'm damned to hell, or if we go the other way, I just need to accept that I'm damned to hell. And you're saying neither, don't do this binary split. Come at it with this idea of this is just an encouragement. You said hortatory, prodding group of words, so to speak, to get us moving in the right direction.
and maybe correct me if I'm putting the wrong statement in your mouth here, Jace, but I think maybe also like Randall, you still kind of said, don't worry about whether you're going or doing this and going to hell. Like, I don't know that the hell part is really part of this necessarily. Like, I think it's more about like what's going on today in their time, like, and what's going on for us in our time. Like, it's not about what's going to happen to you in the future. It's what you're going through right now, and like what the people in your community are going through right now, and what we're trying to protect against, maybe. So
Think back. This is what hit as you two were just talking again. Matthew chapter 5, Sermon on the Mount, or maybe it's Matthew chapter 6, right? Where he says, don't commit adultery, but it's not just about, you've heard it said, don't commit adultery, but really it's about lust in your heart. And then he goes further and he says, well, it's better to gouge out your eye than to spend your existence in hell, right? Like, I don't think you should be thinking about hell or gouging out your eye, or also cut off your arm instead of spend that time in hell. This is I don't know, it's a shock. It's a wake up. Even just looking at a woman lustfully is a problem, right? We need to get control of our bodies. We need to stop lying and stop murdering and stop doing all the things James was talking about and John is now talking about, and what Jesus was talking about in Matthew. So it's the same thing that I would do in a sermon, right? I hope. I would say, here's your charge. This is what you need to do. You have to do this. I need you to realize you can't do this on your own. That's a different thing. That's a Pauline theology, right? You can't do this. Jesus did this for you. And now on the other side of Jesus doing that for you, and his grace and mercy, everything you read about in Ephesians, oh my goodness, beautiful, right? Now you can't keep doing this anymore.
Stop hitting yourself, humanity.
Can't we look at this like we look at so many things, our jobs, our marriage. I became an arborist, and I was an arborist 50 years ago, but after 10 years, I was more of an arborist. After 20 years, I was more of an arborist, and so on and so forth. The same thing in our marriage and in our life and in everything that we do, we grow. And this is what I think he's saying, grow in the Lord Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Yep. Stop giving into all these things, overcome, keep becoming more like Jesus. Yeah. People are going to use different language depending on who's writing. But you're right. It's still the same message. Right? Don't abuse others. Don't fall prey to the system that's around you. Right? I think that's really needs to be our thing here is, look, what is the system doing to us every single day that we are allowing it to continue to drag us down? Right? Even without noticing it, like, because we have blinders on every day. We've got blinders on. Okay. You don't need to hate yourself, but we are supposed to examine ourselves. Right? You don't have to say, well, I'm going to hell now. You need to say, all right, how can I be better? That's just part of Christian life. What are ways that we can improve and look different? Yeah, keep tuning your face back to Jesus.
I've heard you speak on the hortatory purpose before, it's not until tonight that I totally understood what you were trying to get at. So it's finally got into my head.
All right, good. Yeah. Well, then something has happened here, at least for some of us. That's excellent. All right, do we want to keep going for 7 minutes? Do you have some other things you want to note? Because we're about to get into another section. It's not really another section, but at least my Bible separates it. It's the same thing. The New Jerusalem, we get to see it. This is the measuring. All that stuff I started with Ezekiel, assumed we would get to this part and finish it. But no, we had to have a big discussion about this.
We better get to it, I guess.
We'll get to it tomorrow, next week. All right, we'll get to it next week. Here's the idea then. I want you to, this is what I would like you to do if you have time. Read through Ezekiel chapter 40 through 48. Read it and just see the similarities here, because it's really important that you notice that John is picking up on these themes. And Ezekiel is picking up on Exodus, which is picking up on Genesis Eden language, right? All these things they're continuing in that movement. Those of you in my Genesis class on Sunday morning are about to see it super clearly, but you saw it this last week. That was the main thing, right? That was the whole point, is to show you that Eden was a temple, which is supposed to lead us to this final eschatological temple that is being measured, or rather counted. So sorry if you're not in the Genesis class, you're out of luck. Actually, just go on to our website, you can find it. It's all there. Any other last minute things you guys want to say? I'm okay ending 5 minutes early.
Do you have any references for the Exodus or Genesis that link back to that particular Ezekiel, the 40 through 48? Like,
well, Genesis 2 and 3 is the Eden story.
right.
So that's where you see a lot of the Eden descriptions. Exodus chapter 25 through 40 is that story of the tabernacle. And
Okay,
what's
so
the-
it's like, so it's not a subset of that. I mean, when you said Ezekiel 40 through 48, I went, is the through line kind of that, like, that entire block of Ezekiel that you had, or Exodus you had mentioned, like that, all the setting up of the temple?
Yeah. And
Invokes
you can just glance through it or do the spark notes for
Yeah.
it if you want to. Because the point of it is that you're seeing the way that the tabernacle is being created. And there's a ton
Okay, so
of verses.
so the Ezekiel 40 through 48 is also the tabernacle extension.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, gotcha.
It's the eschatological temple.
Okay.
It's an end times temple. It's what's going to come one day. And John's saying it's arrived. Ezekiel didn't fully understand what it was, but John's saying this is what it is. And the problem is that we still don't fully understand what it is. We keep thinking that it's some actual temple that comes down to earth, like, because that's what they wanted. And we're waiting for that to happen, or something to be built in Jerusalem or in some place. And it's missed the whole point of where Revelation is trying to take us, that the temple is the people of God. And it seems to me so very clear. He says it over and over again. You've seen it for the last 30 whatever weeks. But anyway, we'll deal with that more in the next week. And you're gonna be like, well, how come people are inside the temple then? That doesn't make it. Yeah. Again, symbolism. It's just playing with ideas and bringing them all together. So don't try and force it in. All right. Thanks, everybody. Nice to have you guys.
Thanks.
Thanks,
I'm sure
Jay.
a few of us will hang out a little while longer, which is where the good conversations come that Travis never records. So, because he knows as soon as we stop the recording, everyone can say what they really think without feeling judged. It's not going to be recorded. So,
All
all right.
the cuss words can,
Well, that doesn't stop anybody here.
uh,
This is a